On your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors, I put to you something I learned in my first year psych class for the very first time. We're talking about Masai's hierarchy of needs.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Thursday, May the 9th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us over on the Locked On Raptors Discord server. The link is in the description of the podcast every day. It's free to join, costs no money, and it's a great place to come and talk about the Toronto Raptors on the internet in a non-toxic environment. It's very friendly. It's very nice. There's cordial disagreement, a thing that is not found elsewhere. Most corners of the internet, come hang out. It's a great little listener community we got building around the show. You can come tell me how wrong all my takes are and all that good stuff. You'll be wrong, of course, to say my takes are wrong, but that's the beauty of the Discord. It's a platform where you can be wrong and no one cares and no one's mean about it. It's all good. Come join us. Link in the description. Would love to see you there. Of course, you can follow or find the show for free wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. It's always appreciated when you support the show. However you support the show on the audio side of things, you can also find the video version of the show each and every day on YouTube. You can subscribe to the Locked On Raptors YouTube channel, and then you can hit the notification bell and you'll get a push notification that says, "Stop, Sean's talking," every single time the show is about to premiere or go live. So go do that. That sounds like a perfect pitch to me. All right, on today's show, we are taking a look as the draft lottery draws ever closer, 3 days away. 3 days till we have some clarity on what players will actually be available to the Raptors in the draft and what decisions they'll be working with and what kind of cap space they'll be working with and all this stuff based on the results of this Sunday's lottery. And so with that, I wanted to just kind of take a second today to look at the biggest needs the Toronto Raptors have. We're going to do that by ranking them in terms of the most dire to the least dire. And as it happens, there's three things that I think are really big needs for this team. And we will sort of go one by one, segment by segment, break them down and rank them in terms of what's the most important. Okay, again, for first year psych class takers, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're just going to call it Masai's hierarchy of needs today, and dig into what the Raptors really need on their basketball team and how they can address those things and potentially find, sort of pie in the sky solutions or fallback solutions, whatever it might be this off season. Before we do any of that, got to tell you about our friends over at Monopoly Go, the fast-paced game that lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go for free at Google Play or the App Store. Game on. More on them later. All right, let's get to it. The hierarchy of needs. There are three major needs that I think the Toronto Raptors got to fill this offseason if they want to be a serious basketball team next season. I think two of them probably are must fills, and one of them is they could probably get by without filling it. But the three things are wings, the need for a backup point guard, and a third rotation big to play alongside Kelly Olynyk and Jakob Poeltl. Lots of different ways to acquire those types of players. You got the draft, you got trades, you got free agency, you have in-house solutions, which we'll talk about a little bit here. But let's begin with what I think is pretty obviously the biggest need that this team has, and I've said it all along throughout the offseason so far. It's wings. It's two-way wing players to give the Raptors length, to give them defensive versatility, to give them just all of the beautiful things that two-way wing players bring to modern basketball teams. Two-way players are what make the modern NBA go round, and two-way players who are enormous in stature and have long arms and can guard multiple positions, extremely valuable, as we're seeing all around these playoffs. I kind of outlined some of the teams we're seeing with incredible wing talent, really looking good. I don't have to refresh that. Just go look at who's doing well in the playoffs, and you will see, there's lots of teams, lots of wings. That seems to be an important type of player to have on a roster. Success in the modern NBA is built on connective wing players who offer you two-way production, who can be out there in big games when it matters, and you don't worry about their offensive performance or their defensive struggles. They offer you stylistic and lineup versatility in a way that most other types of players can't, outside of like super skilled and spry big men, I suppose. Like, this is just, I mean, every team, this is the biggest need for the Raptors, but this is the biggest need for most teams in the NBA. You can't have enough really good wings. And the Raptors happen to have traded all of their very good wings over the course of this season. And so it's back to square one, filling in the blanks. Obviously, RJ Barrett's on this team, and he is a wing. Scotty Barnes is nominally a wing as well. So they're not starting exactly from scratch. But I don't think we're looking at RJ Barrett as any kind of defensive stopper going forward. It would be lovely, but I don't think it's realistic to expect that he's going to go from the kind of sieve he was on defense to, for the lack of a kinder word, this season into some sort of, renowned wing stopper. There's certainly an average defender in there, a slightly above average defender in there. I don't think there's an all defense defender in there. And so you got to try to find, I think, an upgrade defensively. I've said a lot this offseason. Sorry if I'm repeating myself, but hey, it's the offseason and we only have so much to talk about. But RJ Barrett should be playing the 2 on this team. I think that is sort of the grand vision here. If you can slot in a 3 who, plays off of Scotty Barnes, Barnes is at the 4, you have Poeltl at the 5, and you have RJ next to Quickly in your backcourt, and you have like a guy who connects those lineups, elongates those lineups, filling in at the 3. I think that's kind of the dream outcome here. And it's important. You got to find these types of players. And as I've said, I think there is every reason in the world to use every draft pick they have this season, whether it's 2 or 3, on wing players, and just taking as many shots at that dartboard as you can. If they're picking in the top 6, there's a lot of wings available there. None that are like really getting me all that excited, if I'm being totally real, but your Ron Hollands, your Zachary Risaches, your Matas Buzelises, your Cody Williams, like one of those guys will be there at 6. And I think all things being equal, you probably take that guy at 6 if you're the Raptors. We'll talk about other ways they could approach that pick later on in the show when we talk about some of the other needs. But again, I will have no issues, and I will congratulate and golf clap all around if the Raptors just use all of their picks on wing players in this draft, just to get as many of those types of guys in the door as possible. If 2 or 3 of them hit, then you are absolutely in business. They're the teams around the league that are just set on the wings. Like, give me great envy. Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, incredible. I know things are kind of weird with the Pelicans right now, but they have 5-10 years of Herb Jones and Trey Murphy together to look forward to. That's incredible. That's awesome. The New York Knicks, it's just Jalen Brunson, a big, and a bunch of wings doing wing stuff. We've seen what OG can do. Wings are what make the world go round in 2024 in the NBA. And so, yeah, as far as the draft, 100%, I'm all, on using every pick on a wing if that is available to them, which it will be. In-house solutions. I talked about RJ Barrett a little bit. I don't think it's realistic or even fair to expect him to become like an above average defender next season. Maybe over the course of time, he can kind of rediscover some of the defensive might he had in his early days in his career. I don't think he was ever like a stopper, but he certainly offered more resistance than he seems to now. That's the big swing skill for RJ Barrett. If RJ Barrett becomes like an above average defender and can continue to do what he's done efficiency wise, which we talked about in yesterday's show, I think there's a real chance he can actually do it based on his shot chart, based on the way the Raptors are using him and the way he has cut out all of the sort of less favorable stuff from his game. If he becomes a pretty good defender, RJ Barrett becomes like an incredibly valuable basketball player and a guy on a kind of ridiculous value contract at about 25 to 28 million bucks a year over the next few seasons. That's a big ask. So I don't think you can expect that to be an in-house solution. Scotty Barnes is an interesting potential in-house solution. He's long, he's got the sort of build of your classic, shutdown wing guy. But I do think that we've seen it's more prudent to have him as a low man, help side rim protector type. That's just where his defensive sort of instincts seem to really kick in the most. He's overzealous on the ball. He doesn't really trust his length. He gets caught up too close to the ball and gives up blow-bys, things like that. That's all stuff that can be refined. And would I be stunned if Scotty Barnes came out next year and was a really good point of attack wing defender? Maybe not stunned. I'd be a little surprised. It's still there. The hips are high. You talk about hips and biomechanics and stuff, and scouts have never really been super high on Scotty's ability to be an on-ball defender just because of the way his body is. But I wouldn't be shocked because he's enormous. And when you have like a 7'3" wingspan and you're big and you can slide your feet a little bit, then all of a sudden, maybe there's a pretty good wing defender there. So I do think Scotty, like, he's the most likely candidate on this team to just become that shutdown wing. And if that happens, like, that opens up a lot of possibilities. Do you go and try to find like a stretch 4 type for the long haul, move Scotty to the 3 and have that be your situation? Do you look at like in the draft, for example, like a Tyler Smith type, who is more of a light on defense, offensively gifted stretch 4? Maybe you throw him in there next to a Jakob Poeltl. And if Scotty can be your true shutdown wing guy, then all of a sudden the geometry of that team makes a little bit of sense. Things really change if Scotty becomes an in-house solution here. I'm not banking on it because I think that's a really tall order and a really big thing to ask of a guy who's going to have a ton of offensive burden. And we've already seen is very good as a low helping defender in the defense. Other solutions, you look at the sort of like pie in the sky dream outcomes. I think number one is the long con of the New York Knicks, where they sign OG Anunoby in the offseason. Not happening, but if it did, oh my God, give Masai Executive of the Year. They win the lawsuit. Just give them the money for the lawsuit that's still, I guess, outstanding from last summer. You will have completely owned James Dolan and the New York Knicks, and that would be fantastic. It's not going to happen. It would require dumping more salary than just Bruce Brown and Gary Trent Jr. to open up the cap space to sign OG. All of this, but man, what a perfect fit. OG would be on this team. We've talked about it before. It's a little bit heartbreaking. Realistic outcomes, couple of draft picks, and like a sort of mid-level exception signing for a Najee Marshall or a Caleb Martin as sort of a stopgap wing. I think that's fine. I think that's a perfectly okay way to go. You get a guy in for a couple of years on a mid-level deal, and then you kind of bring up the guys you draft as the long-term replacements there in the starting 5. That's fine. The sort of hellish outcome for this offseason and this particular weakness is overpaying for Najee Marshall or Caleb Martin, one of those types where, you're dropping like 4 years, 80 on Caleb Martin. That could age pretty poorly. That has like DeMarre Carroll written all over it. And I think that's what the Raptors got to avoid here. Like, I don't want to see them use their full free agency bag on one wing, because I don't think one wing out there outside of like Paul George is good enough to really tie this thing together and good enough to sort of bog them down financially going forward in such a significant way. And so that's like, if they get a little crazy and the free agency sort of frenzy forces them to overpay, that's where you run into some trouble with the signings of a Marshall or a Martin or any of the other wings out there, of which there are not all that many, which could lead to that bidding war and paying too much money. And again, sometimes the best free agent deals are the ones you don't sign. Either way, wings are the biggest need. It's no doubt to me. And it probably is also the one they are least likely to fully address this offseason, just because it's hard to do. Everyone wants these guys. They're hard players to find. And even if you draft a really nice rookie, probably going to be 2-3 years before they start to impact winning. You have the odd cases where you have rookies who are ready from Jump Street, but you can't count on that as much as that would be very, very nice. We'll come back on the other side here, get into what I deem to be the second biggest need for this Raptors team and why, coming up just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. When it comes to your financial future, you think you've done it all. You've saved, you've researched, you have invested all that you can. Now you got to take those investments to the next level by using whatever financial great uses, and that is Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. And look, this is not something I ever thought I would think about myself. I thought, hey, I'm a millennial. The world is not really shaped for me to own stuff. And, it's just the way of the world. But eventually you stick it out long enough and you start to be able to think about these things and they become tangibly important to your life. I'm in that spot now. I just bought a house this year and I have to start thinking about the future and stuff. And, how am I going to line things up for my future goals? Yahoo Finance can be the way to do that. They are the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. With a community of over 90 million users each month, Their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Back at it here. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day here. A reminder, you can go find Locked On Sports Today 24/7, your all-day streaming channel covering all of the biggest stories in sports from the local hosts of the Locked On Network. Wonderful resource and a wonderful way to like not work during the day and just have it on and watch podcasts all day. That sounds preferable to work to me. So go check it out. Locked On Sports Today 24/7, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, the whole 9 yards going on over there. All right, let's get back to it. The hierarchy of needs for the Toronto Raptors this offseason. And number two for me, I think you can go either way. Obviously, the two that we have not talked about yet after talking about wings off the top is a backup point guard and a third rotation big. I think the third rotation big is probably, it's closer to being number one than it is to being number three, I think is probably how I'd characterize it. Look, you could make an argument this is the biggest need. I disagree because I think wings are that important, and I don't quite buy the in-house solutions as much as maybe some do. But there's a real case here that, without a third big, this team is at risk of kind of having the whole thing come off the rails again, as it did this year. Surviving without Jakob Poeltl this past season was impossible for the Raptors, even with Kelly Olynyk on the team. They just could not afford to not have his rim protection, his roll gravity, his screening. My God, Jakob Poeltl's screening. It's like one of the most underrated things he brings to the table, but it's massively important. He is the RJ Barrett slingshot. He is the Emmanuel Quickley slingshot. He is the guy through whom they run like 50% of their offense at the elbows because he can hit dudes with screens. He can throw nice passes, and he can put the ball on the deck a little bit if he needs to and score. And he's not doing it all the time, but on those keeper plays, he certainly has a little bit of juice. And so not having that available, it's tough. Kelly Olynyk's a nice player, but he is someone who brings bad defensive rebounding numbers with him in every lineup he joins, and he is not a rim protector whatsoever. You need a ton of insulation out there defensively. If Kelly Olynyk's going to be your five, I think he fits much better as a playmaking four type next to a rim protector. And so I think it's pretty essential for the Raptors to find an insurance policy for Jakob Poeltl, who, look, he's mostly been very durable in his career. Last year's 50 games were the fewest he's played in any season. But, I don't think you want to be banking on perfect health. Ankles happen, things like that. You go up for a month and it can totally derail your season. If the Raptors are this dependent on Jakob Poeltl, it's a problem. And this is not anything against Jakob Poeltl. I'm pretty pro Jakob Poeltl in general. I'm still sort of a mild apologist for the Jakob Poeltl trade, not so much the decision-making behind it or the context of the trade and the sort of the cascading effects of it, but just like pure value. You give up either the 7th or 8th pick in this draft or a later pick next year for Jakob Poeltl. That's good business. He's a good player who you have under contract on a pretty decent number, $20 million a year for the next 3 seasons. He's a nice player, but you can't have your entire world be Jakob Poeltl. And I think having a third big to throw into this mix who offers a little bit of a different skill set would be really valuable, not only to sort of protect yourselves against a Jakob Poeltl injury, but also just to like give you more flexibility and versatility, different ways to deploy Poeltl and Olynyk and whichever third big you have. I think Olynyk and Poeltl can play together some, right? I think that's totally viable if you have the right defensive sort of front line or back line, I guess. Front line? Yeah, like your guards and wings. Like if they're able to stop at the point of attack, you can get by with Kelly Olynyk at the 4. Jakob Poeltl, we know, can clean things up at the rim. That's all very nice. But like you can only do that so much if you have, if you don't have another big to work into the mix, right? You got to stagger those guys if you don't have a third big who's rotation worthy. It really sucks what happened to Christian Koloko. He would have been the guy in this conversation, most likely. You can't account for weird health happenstance, and it's a bummer for him. Wouldn't expect, I know there's been talk of, they're keeping an eye on Koloko. I think if he is back with the team, it's probably on a 2-way, and it probably is a slow ramp up type of thing. I don't think he's just going to go jump in next season if they bring him back and he's got the clear bill of health from the NBA and just say, hey, Christian Koloko, here, go take 15 minutes as our third center now, or a third big. Like, I don't see that. I think it's more of a long-term play if they were to bring him back, but I kind of think at this point it's a bit of a lost cause and they got to look elsewhere. And so, you got to find solutions, whether it be in-house or out of house, to fill in and offer just some ability to not completely fall down the tubes if Jakob Poeltl gets hurt. Poeltl getting hurt in January might have been the thing to seal the Pascal Siakam trade happening, right? Like that team was looking real dangerous right out of the gate after the trade. Jakob Poeltl gets hurt in the fourth game out of the deadline or out of the OG trade, and they don't win another game, I think, until Pascal Siakam gets traded. It was a nightmare. Like, you just can't lean that heavily on one center. But as we've seen, centers very important. I'm glad at least the Raptors have understood that and made some steps to have big players on the team after a couple of seasons of just being like, who needs them? And so, moving forward, positive signs. They like centers again. That's good. As far as in-house solutions, pretty lean on options, right? I think we did see for a brief little flash before he got hurt in the end of his season, Chris Boucher, I think, has something to give. And I do think him in bench looks with Kelly Olynyk, maybe filling in the Ochai Agbaji spot or the Bruce Brown spot in those second units they were running in February. I think there's something there. I think the rim protection and sort of covering up for mistakes that Chris Boucher can offer is nice. He's probably more of a 4 as well, offensively and defensively. He's not super big. He's not like a traditional role target or anything like that. But if you have Olynyk as your nominal 5, he's sort of your last line of defense. At least you have Boucher to kind of offer help at the rim as your sort of roaming 4. I think that can work, but I don't think that's super viable as a full season solution. It might be to be a stopgap next year, but he's expiring and his play is erratic, right? There's a reason he fell out of favor with Darko Rajakovic. He's not a super Darko ball friendly player. He doesn't make super quick decisions with the ball and all of that. I do think there's a place for Chris Boucher in the rotation next season. And I think it's a damn shame he got hurt when he did, because he was playing some decent ball before he got hurt and it all just kind of fell apart. The draft, obviously, definitely a possibility, especially if they have 3 picks to work with. I could totally see them using one of those on a big. I'd be okay with them using the 19th pick on a Kyle Filipowski or a Yves Missi. Although I'm not a super huge Missi guy. I think he's his offense feels very limited. Filipowski, I'm actually maybe kind of in on. He seems like he's kind of got a bit of a well-rounded offensive game. And he's a bit of an MFer. Wouldn't be upset about that. Obviously, the draft dream is you move up to number 1 and draft Alex Sarr or into the top 4. Maybe Sarr doesn't go number 1. Seems like maybe his firm grip on number 1 in a lot of mock drafts is not quite as firm as it once was. Obviously, this is all amorphous and moves. It's a moving target all the time. But Alex Sarr certainly, I think, would be a fantastic fit here. Offensive project, no doubt. But if there's any sort of stretch to his game whatsoever, man, having a guy with defensive versatility, a switchable big man who can knock down the odd triple, that's kind of a perfect guy to throw into the blend with Poeltl and with Olynyk. I think that would be just an absolute delight to watch those guys play in the front court together as your 1, 2, and 3 bigs. But obviously that requires some serious luck on draft night, or on draft lottery night, that is, and on draft night. If they're not picking first, you need the right guy to fall to you. This transaction cycle, there might be a trade for a big I haven't yet considered, but I don't really think there is. I think, the wing market is probably what I'd be scouring more to try to make a trade with, and sort of a big swing deal. I don't really think there's a big star big out there that you can go and swing for. The Wolves are too damn good. Karl Towns not going anywhere. He's bloody incredible. My God. That team, they're not. God, the Wolves are awesome. They're so nasty. They're breaking my heart because I love the Nuggets, but also I can't be that mad when I'm watching Zoomer Jordan and the most hellacious defensive team I've ever seen play. That's a sidebar. Anyway, yeah, I don't think there's really a big trade out there. I think free agency wise, there's a couple of interesting options. I guess Isaiah Hartenstein is going to get paid this summer. Do I want to be the team that pays him? I mean, he'd fit nicely. He'd be probably their best center, honestly. He'd probably step in and threaten for the starting job. Maybe you don't want to have that kind of political discord within your ranks. And it's probably going to cost a lot of money to sign Hartenstein. And I don't know if you want to be going Jakob Poeltl level money or more for Hartenstein based on what he's done this season. That's, I mean, he's worth it. He's very good, but pairing him with Poeltl and Olynyk, that might gets a little bit expensive. It's kind of why I like the draft option a little bit more, or like a discount big option a little bit more. So yeah, I think, a signing not super likely, especially not with Hartenstein. I know Nick Claxton's a guy the Raptors have been linked to in the past. I also don't love Nick Claxton as a player. I think he really regressed this season. I think his offense is actually a concern. And I do think his defense is incredible, but I think him and Jakob Poeltl kind of samey a little bit. And I think you'd want a little bit more sort of at least offensive diversity between those two. But defensively, he's a switch big. He would certainly make some sense, but I do think that could be a situation where you're kind of overpaying, and you don't want to be doing that either. So dream outcome for the big situation, Alex Sarr, I think, is like number one. Realistic outcome, you draft one of like Masai or Filipowski or Kel'el Ware, and maybe there's like a discount signing of like a Thomas Bryant. So you have a couple of bigs kind of fighting for that third spot. You get some internal competition. The hellish outcome, to me, wild overpay for Nick Claxton. That's not going to do it for me. I don't want to see a wild overpay for Nick Claxton. Again, reasonable people can disagree. I know there's some Claxton heads out there. I don't think he's going to be someone that you feel comfortable paying $20+ million a year to, which is probably what's going to take to pry him out of Brooklyn. And I don't know, man. There's not a lot of offense there. You got to have offense. And we already are looking at a Raptors team that doesn't have a ton of shooting from Jakob Poeltl. And Kelly Olynyk has pretty severe weaknesses defensively. Be someone who can kind of do both would be fantastic. That's why Sarr is the dream outcome here. But other than that, I don't think there's like a super obvious way to go and fill this hole in a way that's going to make everyone feel super happy. So we'll see. But yeah, to me, that's the second biggest need, and it's a really big one. We'll come back on the other side. We'll round it out with a look at the third biggest need, maybe something that doesn't have to necessarily be fully addressed this offseason because of the way the Raptors play, but you can never go wrong with a little extra guard play, huh? We'll come back on the other side, talk about that. Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go, and I've been telling you, Monopoly Go, it rocks. And if you're someone who likes to play Monopoly, the board game, but can't either get people together to play it all the time, or your family's like, no, we're not playing it. We only yell at each other when we play. We can't do this. That's fine. Monopoly Go is there to scratch that itch for you. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much more to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Yes, it's not just team play. You can also play on your own. You can also ruin your friends' lives. What better game than ruining your friends' lives? It's like what the sort of phone game economy is built on. And Monopoly Go will absolutely do that for you as well. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or robot pachinko machines. And there's always new timed events that will help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, wrapping things up here on your Thursday episode of the podcast. Just a heads up, tomorrow on the show, S. Baraheny, my pal, my partner in calling Canadian Elite Basketball League games, is going to be on the podcast, and we are going to have the conclusion of the keep versus convey debate. We'll lay it all out, the case for, the case against, and tee up the draft lottery Sunday. I will also have an episode coming out Sunday after the lottery. Not sure exactly what time it's going down at, but I will be at home. I'll be watching it, and I'll be recording a podcast upon its completion. I'll be hanging out in the Discord. I might do like a little voice hangout in the Discord or something like that during the lottery as well. So join the Discord before Sunday. That's going to be the place to be. It's going to be tons of fun, and you'll get to hear my instant reactions in there as well. Okay, let's get to it. The last of the needs on the hierarchy of needs for the Toronto Raptors is backup point guard. A little extra guard play. Look, this is less of a thing, I think, if Bruce Brown sticks around on the team. Maybe that's not likely to happen. I have no real idea. I also know he's not like a traditional point guard, but I do think that because of the way this team plays, this is the easiest need to address, and also probably the one that they can afford to not address this summer the most. Because look, they run a lot of their offense through Emmanuel Quickley, through Scotty Barnes, through their bigs and Olynyk and Poeltl. It's not to say that you can't have more guards. No one ever went into business having lots of good guard play, but I don't think it's like a necessity for the team's functionality necessarily. Like I think next year, if they don't have a backup big or a third big to sort of fill in if Poeltl gets hurt, they might not be functional. And so, and that's not to say like that's the same. It goes for Quickly as well. If Quickly got hurt, God forbid, knock on wood, et cetera, that would be bad. It would be very hard to overcome, no doubt. But I think they have enough dudes who like do the creation bit. If they keep Bruce Brown, he's like a pseudo point guard, a half point guard, whatever you want to call him. He's just kind of like a basketball player who does amorphous things, whatever. I think they can kind of get by. That said, yeah, it'd be very nice if they could go and add a backup point guard to this team and just give them a little bit more insulation there, a little bit of guard depth. And I think, there's a lot of different ways this can be tackled. And I do think if they end up in the top 6, I could actually hear an argument for using their top 6 pick on a guard. Obviously, I've been hammering the table saying I want wings, like I'm at the pub. But no, like the top 6, like the wings in there are not all that impressive, man. There's like a lot of questions. And I think if you were to kind of get maybe more of a sure thing player who, like a Nikola Topic, who I think is just going to be a good guard. Is he going to be a great guard? Who's to say? But if you're drafting him right away, he's your backup out of the gate. He's also 6'6" and could eventually slide into 2-guard lineups with Quickly and not have it be like a problem size-wise or anything like that. I do think there's like a real case for Topic being a guy they look at in the top 6 to be their backup for now, and then eventually maybe he grows into something more. I don't think you could. Like, I think he's going to be more of a sure thing than the wings. And so, like, again, while I'm team wing, and I would still probably take a wing over Topic, it's in the top 6. Like, I'm not guaranteed to feel that way come draft time, honestly. I'm so cool on the top of the wing crop this year and way more interested in the sort of middle back end of the wing crop that I could totally be swayed into thinking, hey, the right thing to do here is take Nikola Topic at 6 or 4 or whatever if they end up and they move up in the draft lottery, which of course is less likely to happen than them not having the pick at all. As far as in-house options for the backup point guard job, obviously Javon Freeman-Liberty is kind of the only guy even sort of in the conversation. And he, to me, like he was absolutely the most impressive of the fringe roster guys down the stretch. But how much can you really ask of him? He's like an older two-way guy. He's not a traditional point guard. He's more of a combo guard type. He's maybe more like inclined to score than he is to play make, although I think he has a little bit of nice passing juice. I think he deserves to be on the team. I think having him in the guard rotation is not a bad thing. If he's your third guard, I think you're fine. Like, I don't think it's a problem, but I do think it would just be tough to go into next year and be like, Javon Freeman-Liberty, you're the backup point guard, run with the job. I think that's a lot to ask. So if he could be the third point guard, I think that's far preferable. Someone who steps in if there's injury, that type of thing. I think that's kind of the pathway here. Mentioned the draft as a solution here. Talked about Topic. I would not be using a top 6 pick on Rob Dillingham or Reed Shepherd. I don't trust the defense with either of those guys. I don't trust the size. I think it's going to be a real problem. And I think there's overlap there with Emmanuel Quickly. Like, they don't have to address the lead guard job anymore. That's Quickly. That he's going to be the lead guard. And I don't see Dillingham or Shepherd netting out to better than Quickly. And so I'm pretty cool on both of those guys. But yeah, Topic, totally could see the argument for taking him top 6, just getting some extra guard play on the team via a high pick, and hopefully becomes someone who can start down the line or something like that too. Or maybe he becomes like a flashy trade chip or whatever. Later on in the draft at 19, there could be some real options. There's Jared McCain, who maybe he's a bit of a draft riser. It seems he might not be there, but we've talked about a handful of guards. Devin Carter is one who might be there, out of Providence. And the other guy is Tyler Kolek out of Marquette, who looks like he's just going to be a 10-year high-end backup in the NBA. Like, why not get that dude on your team who projects to be exactly what you need your team to have right now? Could totally get on board with that at the 19th pick. Not sure I'd love using the 19th pick on a guard if they've not kept the top 6 pick. Because I think, they got to go with a wing at some point. And if you only have 19 and 31, I think 19 is no-brainer wing territory with the way this class is going to break, it seems. And so I think Kolek at 19 or any guard at 19 is probably contingent upon them getting a wing in the top 6 if they keep the top 6 pick. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at there. The dream scenario, it'd be nice to get like an NBA ready backup out of the draft, right? Like that is number one. If you can get Devin Carter, that guy can probably play right away. Is he a traditional point guard? That's up for debate. Can Tyler Kolek play right away? Probably closer than most. Multi-year college guy. Just kind of seems to have a pretty good sense of the game and a good finger on the pulse, et cetera, et cetera. Just point guard stuff coming out of that guy all over the place. I think that's the ideal outcome here for how do you address the backup point guard spot. The realistic outcome here is maybe you take like a longer term guard project. Maybe you take one high and there's the upside play there, and you maybe want to find someone else to come in and fill in the job. And you kind of use a chunk of your mid-level exception on a DeLon Wright or a Monte Morris. That's probably the realistic outcome. And I wouldn't have a problem with that if they, say they use 19 or 31 on a guard and then go and sign more of a vet guy for the next year or two. I think that would be perfectly fine. The hellish outcome here. Look, I had a second where I was like, what if they just paid Tyus Jones? But thinking about the books, thinking about the long-term fit of the team, the biggest needs on this team, to use their best resource, which right now might be cap space on Tyus Jones to be your backup long-term, I don't think that's the best move. I don't think you should be making big money free agent acquisitions for backups. And I have very much come off my stance of just throw some money at Tyus Jones. Who cares? It's fine. No. I think it'd be a bad idea. I like Tyus Jones a lot. But he's never going to start on this team, and giving him what he's probably going to command going into the market. If he's not getting a starting job in particular, like he's probably going to be like, well, you got to like sweeten the pot for me a little bit because I think I'm a starter, even if he might start on like 3 teams in the NBA at most. I don't think that would be a pretty bad outcome. It's similar to dropping $20 million a year on Caleb Martin. I think that could age pretty poorly and kind of hamstring them and just be a deal that's just like, you're not getting the right value from a good player who is playing in backup minutes but making starters money. I don't think that's kind of the best way to set up the books going forward. So that would be, I think, to me, like the hellish outcome of trying to address the backup point guard spot. But yeah, just, it would be really sweet if you could just get an NBA ready backup at 19 or 31. How rad would that be? Probably unlikely, but pretty cool. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We'll be back again tomorrow with S. Barrett Henning as we talk about keeping versus conveying for the final time, mercifully, going into the offseason. Of course, going into the lottery on Sunday. Of course, if things don't go well in the lottery, or they do go well, depending on your respective, and they keep the pick, then we will talk about keeping versus conveying again next year, the entire season. Yay! That'll be fun, right? Right? We'll have so much fun with that. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out. We will talk to you again on Friday with that episode with S. In the meantime, follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. It's always appreciated when you support the show, however you support the show. We're on the audio apps for free. We're on YouTube as well. Go subscribe and do the thing. It's a free podcast, please. It's just all we asked. It's not a whole lot, not a lot of burden. Doesn't take a lot of time, but it makes me feel very, very good when you take those extra steps to support the show. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you Friday. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. And I have to reach for my basketball here to take a shot because it's on the ground. Give me 1 second. Hang on. Hang on. All right. Buckets. Let's go. Ooh, bye.